As an early birthday present, my wonderful husband recently took me on a long weekend road trip to France.
Yes, do you have your documents? I'm coming to check them. Sir, do you have your travel documents?
Having crossed the channel by ferry, we started off naturally with a day at Disneyland Paris, my local Disney park since moving to England.
I told you. I tried to warn you.
I could go faster than this in my pedal car as a kid.
But the rest of the trip we had left wide open to bring a bit of spontaneity and adventure to the trip. One thing I love about Disneyland Paris is rather than Tomorrowland, they have Discoveryland, heavily influenced in its design by the Victorian science fiction steampunk aesthetic of French author Jules Verne, complete with a model and walkthrough of his Nautilus from the novel and 1954 Disney adaptation of 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. So when looking at our potential options for the next day and a half of our trip, I found that we were well within viable driving distance of Amiens, longtime home and final resting place of Jules Verne. So that's where we went. After a couple of hours passing through quaint towns with their colorfully shuttered windows, scattered between large stretches of flat countryside and a few fairy tale woodlands, we arrived in Amiens.
Have I just ruined the video?
No.
Okay. Now I have. It's a sort of Bruges feel about it. Absolutely.
A room in Amiens for the night. With cinema screen.
Et hot tub.
Et hot tub.
Oh, tub chaud. Bain chaud. 3, 2, 1. Élimination.
Jules Verne lived in Amiens for over 30 years, staying until his passing in 1905. He is certainly the main historical draw of the city, with buildings, buses, and much more named after him. We toured his house, a real display of who he was at the height of his literary fame.
Imagine this being where you one day you were such a genius, having been so inspired.
Oh God, yeah.
As you ascend up the tower, one of the upper levels was decked out to look like Verne's boat. and continuing up into the attic, there was a small museum of the film adaptations and further influence of Verne's stories. After completing our tour of La Maison du Jules Verne, it was only a short walk to the cathedral. La Cathédrale Notre-Dame d'Amiens is a twin of the Salisbury Cathedral in England and is one of the largest classic Gothic cathedrals of the 13th century, much bigger than Notre-Dame de Paris. Jules Verne was influenced by this cathedral and Amiens when writing An Ideal City. Of course, I had to find a bookshop. I really wanted a Jules Verne book from Amiens for my library as a souvenir of our travels, and I found the perfect copy. This facsimile edition of De la Terre à la Lune, From the Earth to the Moon. This bookshop had quite a few titles in this beautiful facsimile series, and they were so cheap, less than €9. I've also fairly recently started collecting editions of Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone in different languages when we travel, so I picked up a French copy of that as well. Last stop before dinner was the Cimetière de la Madeleine d'Amiens, the most stunning cemetery I have visited thus far.
French is where I'd be buried. I'd choose to be buried.
It's the entire family.
And the final resting place, of course, of Jules Verne. It may sound strange and slightly macabre, but I enjoy collecting visits to notable graves, as you may have gathered if you saw my previous video visiting Jane Austen's grave in Winchester. And now that I had a new Jules Verne with me, I thought I'd also read a bit at his feet. Or at least pretend to read, because let's be perfectly honest, I can't read French. P.S. I'm working really hard on my pronunciations in this video, so my apologies if I'm butchering anything. Nevertheless, I think this is my favorite grave I visited thus far. There were further points of Jules Verne interest and influence with various tours of the city and the Musée de Picardy, but we got in the main points we wanted to experience before the close of day. All that was left was dinner by the Somme. Before catching our ferry home the next day, we stopped by Nausicaa, Europe's largest aquarium. But then it was time to head back to England. I hope you enjoyed tagging along on our little French, spontaneously literary trip, and a big thank you to all my subscribers as well as all other fellow bookworms, collectors, and nerdy human beings watching. As always, be kind, be curious, be authentic, and effective. Au revoir.